Hello there and welcome. Episode 5 of Digital Dialogues. I'm Rene Grosdanovski, and in each episode, I take you on a journey through some of the biggest digital questions in the asset intensive industry. Each episode focuses on a different topic, and each has some interesting guests, providing expert and real life insight into the topic at hand. The aim is to unpack each topic and discuss in detail what they mean for you and your organization. I'm sure you guys all missed me last week. Sam kindly covered for me in the last episode, and from the feedback I'm receiving, it seems like he did a great job, obviously as expected. So thank you, Sam. Before we get going this week, let me take a moment to remind you to join our LinkedIn group. And as always, it is an interactive session with a Q&A panel to the right of the stream. So make sure to engage with me and the experts. I do want your input. I want to hear from you, and I want to know what the questions is that you have about this topic. Well, and otherwise, I got to come up with all the questions, so I really do count on you. Well, this episode is kind of a follow-up from episode 3 on single view of an asset, which was all about understanding all aspects of asset health and factors contributing to understanding the health of an asset and make better decisions. Today, I see as an extension of this, focusing on a topic which only a few years ago seemed like nirvana, and for some seasoned asset management practitioner is the stuff that dreams are made of. Of course, I'm talking about moving to condition or predictive-based maintenance. For many organizations, the strategy of how to maintain the assets is a balancing act, ranging between a scheduled maintenance strategy where, based on research, 30% of maintenance activities are carried out too frequently, and reactive, where only 18% of assets have an age-related failure pattern. Or with other words, 82% of asset failures occur, what they say, randomly. But what if we can find that sweet spot, that nirvana, where all the information that we have about our assets comes together in one place, where the data is analyzed, patterns recognized, and the system tells us what assets are actually requiring our attention, time, and most importantly, money. Welcome to the age of predictive maintenance. I hope you can see now why I see this as an extension of episode 3. Having a solid base of collated, structured information about our asset is key in deriving valuable insights to support such decision making. After all, we're about to turn over the frequency of maintenance on some of our key assets to a machine. Not sure about you, but Siri doesn't always get it right for me. This may seem like a little scary though. Certainly, going from where most people are today to where they want to go seems like it requires a bit of a leap of faith. But I'm being told it's not quite as bad, and that the technology behind all this is in fact very reliable. So how does one go about this transition? Beyond the data, what do I need to focus on? What technologies are out there? And how do I make the actual transition from where I am today to where I want to be? Well, as always, I have a set of experts with me who are here to help me answer some of these, and with your help, some other questions. Let me introduce them. With me here today, I have Scott Taylor, Specialist Business Systems at Portwater Coal Services in Newcastle. My colleagues, Jane Hartright, Resident Data Guru, and Glenn Clark, Solutioneer, both from Certus. Scott, James, Glenn, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you? Starting with you, Scott.
Hi, yes, I've been at Portwater now, coming up 20 years, working in the applications team. My team look after some of our custom-built systems and enterprise systems, Maximo being one of them. And we work quite closely with our maintenance friends to make sure we get the most out of our maintenance systems.
Thank you. James?
Yep, James Hartright. I've been working in the asset space for over 10 years and with a keen eye on data, AI, machine learning, algorithms, etc. So I'm probably the geek in the corner. But yeah, it's been really interesting seeing over the last 10 years how the asset management space is taking on data and analytics in a way that I believe is really adding value.
It is a brave new world. And finally, Glenn, let's hear from you.
Yes, hello everyone. I've been working in this space with asset management systems now for probably about 30 years, helping many people put these systems in, right from the start of those processes through to nowadays trying to encourage people to take those systems beyond the basics. And I've had a little bit of a focus more recently on asset health insights and the technologies that are available to move up the maturity chain in the systems.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Scott and James. Okay, well, it's that time of the day where I hand over to James, and James is going to unpack this topic for us and tell us a little bit more about condition-based maintenance. James.
Thank you. So, yeah, the journey. I've been, for the last 18 months, going around a large number of asset organisations across Australia and New Zealand, and for many organisations, the starter on the asset health is something that's baked in. Lots of people are doing inspections, analysing that data, looking at the core asset attributes that can go, this asset is not really playing the game, and building out bits and pieces in changing the way that maintenance occurs on those, and in some cases, swapping assets out that are really going really bad actors. They're taking that, building those pieces out, but then moving on to actually, okay, well, I've got appointed time. Let's do this on an ad hoc basis, once every 6 months, 12 months, to really truly bringing in more around, let's have a look at the assets. Let's look at assets as they're grouped together and see if we can see certain assets behaving differently to others. And let's look at some of those attributes and weight and tune and look at certain things that maybe are more important in understanding health and decay in health than others. And that's probably where the majority of organizations we've been working with have got to. The next stage, it's very definitely a maturity jump, and part of it is going right. All of that SCADA data and the new IoT data is coming in. That we're using that data, and we want to try and use that data and start looking at thresholds. So defining places where if a stream of data goes above or below a certain threshold, stays there for a period of time, that we want to know about it, because that truly is giving us a situational indication that something's going a bit off kilter. And utilizing that in relation to right, we've had unscheduled maintenance, we've had a near miss, or even worse, we've had an outage, and actually starting to work through root cause analysis and work back and go, hey, could we have spotted this earlier? Could we spot a similar scenario if it came up again, and catch it before it got to that point of failure? And there's obviously a lot of data coming in there, a lot of setup and processes and flows that we need. There's the issue that if you get these thresholds and anomalies and detections, and as Rene said, if you give this to the machine to do, the issues we found is that you get what are called false positives and false negatives. Hey, something's about to happen, you need to go and look at it. And the engineer will go and look and go, nah, it's fine, don't worry, mate. Similarly, on the negatives is the thresholds or the anomalies have not been set up correctly, and something happens that we still random occurrence of something that we didn't catch. So that fourth part, and actually it runs all the way through, is the human in the loop. That we want the black box to present this information up, but we want the human in the loop to be able to refine that, to adjust those, to go, okay, if this anomaly happens once, then don't worry about it. But if it happens 3 times in an hour, that's the time at which I want you to alert me. Bringing all of that in, bringing that feedback loop in, is part of that maturity, but it moves to a continuous piece, that this SCADA data, the IoT data is coming through continuously, and we really want to make that and improve and refine the process. at various stages through that, we've got information that can be used in terms of maintenance planning. So very definitely we're going to take this data through, and it's going to go through to finance, going to go through maintenance planning and forecasting in, as I said earlier, maybe this is a replace situation versus a repair situation. We've gone through and done unscheduled maintenance on this 10 times in the last year. It's time to rip it out and put another one in. So those are the 4 stages that we've seen through that maturity journey. And in each of those stages, there are little hurdles, little things that you should be looking at. Now, when you're in that monitoring and metrics, and sometimes in the inspect and analyze, data quality pops up. So if you're looking at core attributes and they're not populated, or they're populated with the default values, then the outcome of your score is going to be, it's not that it will never work, it's just that you couldn't look at across the board. The second one, when you're starting to use these threshold and anomalies and maybe adjusting your maintenance schedule accordingly, it's probably something you've already got in there, but following FMEA, FMECA, and actually going, okay, if we do leave off this, if we do adjust our schedule, what is the impact? How would we catch it? What do we need to put in to ensure that it doesn't get to failure, even if we're going on a condition-based? And then the third block is we are truly making changes. As we get up through that 3rd and 4th level, we're asking maintenance engineers to not do what they've always been trained to do, to adjust the maintenance, to adjust outside of scheduled maintenance. So, but you're also bringing in new processes and procedures. You're bringing in this thing where the robot supervisor is going, you should look at this, you should go and check this out. And so the organizational change has to be part of this process where you get this embedded, because otherwise those false positives and negatives will just be rejected. People will ignore them and go, I don't need this, I don't want this, it's not working for me. So that's the maturity journey. And then just a quick piece in the various tools that we've seen around there. So at that first stage of inspect and analyze, Excel is king. And it's a great tool. Everybody's using it, but it's in an ad hoc basis. It's in the control of a few people. So getting it embedded and processed. Pi, a lot of people are using Pi, not just for the operational side, but leading into the maintenance side. And the thing that Glenn and I have been working on, IBM Mahi. So an add-on to Maximo for health insights. Both of those are fulfilling that same sort of process. This isn't an operational reflection. This isn't an immediate, hey, we need to go and look at this. This is looking at the long term, but doing it in a very process-orientated way. The tools and capabilities that we get into that 3rd level is really where this overload of data, the smarts that they have in there, we're actually getting enabling tools. So the 2 diagrams we see there, which are off Microsoft's anomaly detector and IBM's APM, are looking at that data and saying, hey, I believe these are the threshold points. You've told me that there was a near miss or an outage here, and it can start constructing what it believes are the starter thresholds that we can then tune onwards. And then the last block, a lot more in terms of image analytics and other bits and pieces where we can do through true condition, actually have a look at the asset, and we can train up artificial intelligence to go, hey, you've told me that this fading on this transformer tells me that there's an oil leak in the transformer, and therefore if I see that situation again, I can similarly alert you and say something's going wrong with this piece of equipment. So that's the sort of journey and the sort of tools that we've seen in and around. Which leads me on to, let's actually talk about some of the instances where we've done this and seen this, and certainly from Scott, hopefully telling us some of the tools he's been using.
Thank you, James.
Back to Rene.
Yeah, no, thank you. We had a question come in whilst you were talking. I didn't want to interrupt you there. And I thought it's a really good question to cover off straight away. And it says, What are the challenges to moving from the failure of individual assets to related networks of assets? So you mentioned obviously about the understanding of essentially what is asset hierarchies and small components of assets.
Yep.
To roll that up to something that actually produces an outcome.
Yeah, and this very definitely connects back to the previous session we were in the 360 asset. So the hierarchy of assets, the interconnectedness of the assets, and the data that we get through, for the example, the GIS connectivity. This is absolutely something that we need to pull on. In that, effectively, a parent or an upstream asset can actually be the thing that's driving through to the lower level asset. The tools and functions here. So those things around, let's throw our data to the anomaly detection engine. One of the pieces there is that, hey, the anomaly detection found nothing in this stream of data that seemed to indicate why we had a failure. And it's just it should be a quick and easy driver to go, maybe we're looking at the wrong thing. So actually go and look at upstream. But yes, utilizing the GIS information, using any hierarchy data that you've got, by putting that information in, some of these pieces can, well, either just by design, you're going, I need to think of them, or those machine learning tools and the like can go, yeah, it's this facet that is actually seems to be driving the anomaly.
Interesting. Scott, obviously, as our customer on this call, and I know obviously everybody faces these challenges. Is this the problem isn't unique to an industry or unique to a particular client? What comes to mind, I guess, when you just heard James's presentation? How does this relate to you?
Yep. So adding to James's comments there, classifying your assets using the types on assets, and also utilizing different systems on assets to help you, I suppose, work out that network relationship. So I suppose most people using the Maximo system might have a default system, but people probably don't realize you can have multiple systems under a hierarchy. So how do you relate that information? So for us, we've got large machines which are made up of mechanical, electrical, water systems. So we can have different systems within systems. So we can break that down into different ways. So if we have an individual failure on a gearbox, for example, we can classify those gearbox and have a look across all of them, looking for those one-off incident, and then comparing that against all the equivalent assets and seeing what's happening across those assets. So how you interconnect your assets and your locations is very important to help you troubleshoot those, move from, I suppose, a one-off incident to getting an overall view of all your assets of a particular type.
Yeah, that does make perfect sense. And like you say, you do have some very big pieces of technology and equipment. Pretty impressive, actually. Glenn, quietly sitting in the background. Obviously, you've been working with a number of clients across a number of industries. Anything you'd like to add?
I think the question is really valid. This interconnectivity of assets is important. Some of the tools that James has been talking about have the capacity to analyze so much data that they can usually pick up the interconnected things that are, that you may not see in a spreadsheet, or the more, let's call them, primitive tools and that. So I think that's where the technologies bring some help to users, is understanding the correlations between different data points and finding those links that prove the causes of anomalies might not be related to the asset that you think it is.
Yeah, it's valid. It's obviously quite hard to understand when you're dealing with so much data and just such a volume of information. Obviously, no episode will be without me having prepared some clever questions up front. And so these are the kind of stuff that I think, something that I would like to know about, and I'm so therefore hoping that some of our viewers are interested in it. One thing I wanted to know from you, Scott, is how embedded is condition monitoring in your organization today?
Yeah, Rene, we do have a lot of condition monitoring, but at this point in time, most of it is manually based. So we have organisations that come in and do thickness testing and hardness testing of conveyor belts. They monitor oil conditioning gearboxes, vibration analysis on our drives. So that information is taken off site, analysed, and then they come back and make recommendations. So what we're looking at is how do we bring that in-house to give us a view of our system, how healthy is that overall system. So we do have some automatic, I suppose we have internal monitoring as well. So We have thickness testing of certain machines. We're doing battery voltage, impedance, discharge monitoring to try and get a bit of a trend about are we looking for trends when things are starting to go down or up? Are we going to fail? And for some of our equipment, there are quite long lead times, so we need to make sure that we are well in advance of when we're predicting when we need to go and purchase that equipment. So some of that stuff is happening internally. Last year, we just did a proof of concept with generating some of the information from our process control systems, and that has driven a bit of interest from other maintenance staff within the organisation. Once they see what can be done, most of our stuff is managed in spreadsheets, lots of asset registers around outside of Maximo. We have the core asset and core location in Maximo, but all the other information sitting in spreadsheets outside. So when we try and bring a report together, it's very difficult.
Of course.
So even last week, an electrician said, can we generate a PM once this fan's been running for 1,000 hours? It's like, yes, we can. But there's some work to do before we get to that point.
Yeah, of course. And like you say, having your data in a central repository, going back to episode 3, is such a key element to all of this. Have you hit any sort of data or process challenges, obviously, along the way of trying to implement some of these condition monitoring elements?
Yes, so I suppose James touched on some of these things, and so Glenn, so in our organisation we have something like 50,000 process control tags running around monitoring our plant. So which one of those do you want to monitor? Which one of those actually makes sense? How much data do you want to capture? So some of our process control tags are being recorded every second. So do you want to record every second, every minute, every day of what happens when the same information is being recorded? So how do you pull the information together into something useful? Do you get your process control engineers to do that summarization for you? Do you get software which does it for you? And how much of that information do you store in Maximo to use? So during our proof of concept, I suppose we manually tweak some of that stuff together, and I suppose it highlights that if you go wholesale into this, you do need some tools and processes to help you. For example, our process control engineers will reuse tags on other machines, and all of a sudden the tag that was monitoring the voltage on one piece of equipment might be maintaining equipment voltage on another piece of equipment. So what change management process do you have around capturing those changes? When we refurb and replace certain equipment, do you have the processes in place to reset your meters and counters and that type of stuff? So you could need to think about the process. So when you have replaced a gearbox, the counter goes back to 0 again, and then you start recording it again. I've come across, while we're doing a proof of concept, we had a look at a bit of software which is quite interesting, where it basically has one foot in the process control camp and one foot in, I suppose, the Maximo camp. And you can actually map tags to assets and locations, and it can summarize information for you and just put in summaries from Maximo. You can actually click on an asset and drill down into seeing the trends and that type of stuff. So being a proof of concept, we didn't have much money to throw at it, but if we're going to go wholesale into this process, it's certainly a bit of interesting software. So you need to think about, you do have lots and lots of information running around, and it doesn't make sense to record the temperature of a gearbox every second of the day in Maximo, or do you just want to have an average? Do you want to have a sample at what time when it's running? So those type of things you do need to think about when implementing automated condition monitoring systems.
No, that's really well, like you say. I mean, there's a lot of information available, but what is actually meaningful. Glenn, again, you having worked on a number of initiatives around different industries with different clients, what sort of benefits are you seeing organizations unlocking when implementing condition monitoring?
I think one of the benefits people expect, and therefore it becomes a bit of a bait for this type of discussion, is the savings and costs. James mentioned it earlier in his introduction that people are looking for ways to reduce scheduled maintenance, or at least scheduled maintenance that doesn't appear to deliver any value when we regularly inspect or lubricate or do service an asset that doesn't appear to be failing or deteriorating. So there should be an opportunity for savings in the cost area. The thing is, what do you do with those savings? And the idea is you should take those savings and invest them in changing the way you do things, in terms of putting in place the systems and some of the technologies that we've talked about, basically getting smarter about it so that you get a good idea as to where the assets are heading and understanding their health. And it's just investing. The benefit is that you get smarter at it. People are using more advanced technologies and getting the benefits out of that. So those are the two areas I think that we see benefits come into the organisation. The the quantifiable one of cost savings, and the qualitative benefit of just getting smarter about how you service your assets, and therefore what you deliver with those assets to the organisation or to the community.
Yeah, that's very relevant. Do you see many advanced techniques such as anomaly detection or image analytics being used? Like I said, James was talking about the tools that align to a maturity, but we all know that not everyone follows, the given recipe book. Are we seeing at least exploratory type stuff in the sense of POCs and so on?
I think people, say SCADA's been around for ages, so people have always been using that. What we're seeing is them starting to connect it to their asset management systems, and a bit like Scott's talked about there earlier, and that delivers some immediate advantages. There's a lot of interest in IoT connectivity now, and narrowband IoT is making that much more practical for either widely dispersed assets or assets that are sitting inside great chunks of concrete that you couldn't normally get a signal from. So I guess we're seeing people express interest in that. The opportunities to move into some of the more exciting areas of artificial intelligence for audio or visual assessments or analysis. I guess people, it's a journey, and so people have to start somewhere, and condition monitoring is probably a great place to start, but it certainly gets you on that path towards some of those more sexy technologies that are waiting for you.
If you say that's sexy, I don't know. James, I felt like I cut you off there. I think you felt that you had some to add.
Yeah, I was just going to. A number of our clients have to report up through regulator and compliance through government, and that's one of the artifacts that we've seen, which is by having this well-defined process of measuring, monitoring condition, even if it is just through the inspections, and leading that up through and going, hey, this is our plan for the next 1, 2, 5, 20 years, and we're doing it off the back of underlying data. If the regulator comes, you can go, hey, here is a whole set of data of processes that we're following, of measurements that we're continually taking. This is why that request for extra funding is valid, and I've seen that through the many years in just you can argue against our calculations, but in terms of going, we followed this, we followed those deterioration rates, it is much more. You get a much quicker, should we say, approval of, yes, I can see what you've done there, and I can agree that spend is appropriate.
That's valid. I mean, it does provide a real life feedback loop, right, of investment and changes. Since I have your attention, then tell me, do you think AI will take over from humans in this condition monitoring space? I mean, we're talking about really replacing or substituting or maybe supporting what is today's decision maker in this space. So where do you see this ending? Or where do you see this going, maybe?
Well, in our lifetimes, some of us anyway. Scott might live a little bit longer than the rest of us. I put it in that other slide. Human in the loop is an absolute must. What we're getting as this AI and machine learning is maturing is that it's a thing called supervised learning. So we're using that expertise of the maintenance engineers, the maintenance planners, even the OEM guys in this is what's going on, and this is actually a valid thing for you as an AI to report on. But these sensors do not have the true, going out there and seeing, oh yeah, there's a possum slumped over the cables there. That's why this is. So the absolute human in the loop and the human making the final decision is where we're going to be for a very long time.
So we're really talking about is supporting the people that are already doing the job and helping them to do it better and allowing us to get, I guess, more from the people that we already have. And at the end of the day, that's where our biggest investment lies. I just had a comment come through from our virtual audience, Dexter. It says, just a comment, we live in a world that data is so rich, but oftentimes we fail to understand why we are collecting this data. Where are we going to use it, or who owns this data? It is a really valid point. I guess, I don't know, let's turn it over to Scott. What do you make of that? I think there is something there.
It certainly is. So ownership of data and knowing the source is critical. So if you've got some questions about it, you need to be able to go back to the source and figure out, is it good, is it bad, does it need to be adjusted, that type of stuff. We did a proof of concept recently about why some of our conveyor belts were coming off their tracks. And unbeknownst to us, it was actually related to the time of day and the weather conditions. So there was early morning, late afternoon when there was moisture in the air, which caused the conveyor belts to slip. So while we're recording daily, minute by minute, second by second weather information, it was unknown to us that we're going to use it in a correlation to figure out why some of our equipment is failing. So it's hard to understand at the point in time you're recording it, but after the event, it's very hard to go, oh, I should have recorded that and can I get it back again? So I would say if you can record information, do so. Knowing where it comes from and having some governance around who owns it, where it comes from, is very important. But there are times when you go, oh, what actually happened at the same time? So we had all sorts of things, the coal brands and temperatures and recent maintenance history. So I suppose as Glenn was saying, how do we pull that information together and get some correlation? So when this thing went up and this thing went down, are they correlated or not? Or are they just coincidental? So gathering information is important, and knowing it's trusted and accurate is important. But it is challenging because where do you put it all and where do you store it all and how do you manage and access that data? It's a challenging problem.
And I did say early on structured data, didn't I? And obviously being able to put that into context is quite difficult. And, we've been talking about data quality and stewardship for years, right? Especially as we were moving towards an era where data was becoming ever more important and we were using it more and more autonomously. Understanding and being able to rely on it, has become a full-time job. So, okay, well, thank you for that. I guess we are sort of coming to the end of our session here today. I just wanted to say thank you to all my panelists for joining me today. I obviously know that you guys are all really busy. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and have a chat to me about this topic. For my virtual audience, I hope you found this topic as interesting as me. For me, as I said from the beginning, predictive maintenance has always been a bit of a fascination. And I know most of our customers, this step is a step on their asset maturity roadmap. And why not? For me, this is where the rubber hits the road, allowing us to focus our attention where it matters the most, foreseeing what is going to happen and take a preventative step that is based on deep understanding of not just the data surrounding our assets, but also to trends in this data and what do they mean. We always talk about how the most precious commodity are our people, and combined with an aging workforce, how making the most of the time we have of these people is becoming ever more important. Well, this combines all that and connects what our people do on a daily basis with the level of service we provide to our customers with these assets. Again, I want to thank Scott, James, and Glenn for taking the time today and help me understand this, and hopefully you all this a little bit better. Like I said, I hope you enjoyed episode 5, the journey to condition-based maintenance. In the next episode, we'll be talking about platform thinking in an asset-intensive organization. So I hope you can all join me and I get to see you all again in a couple of weeks' time. Until then,